Male genitalia piercings. We're going to talk about those today and what's the best type of jewelry to use or style of jewelry when you initially get the piercing. Coming up next on Body Piercing Basics, episode number 88. So stick around. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located here, right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside the Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I've taught you a level of expertise that comes with being in the body piercing industry for well over 26 years. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about male genitalia piercings. What are the best options for jewelry style and etc. For those that, just kind of a disclaimer, those that don't want to learn about male genitalia, don't want to listen to anybody talking about male genitalia or anatomy, or maybe in that part, your part of the world, it's kind of prohibited or not allowed at your age, please find another video. We have a great deal of videos on this channel that have absolutely nothing to do with this particular subject, and they are age appropriate with a focus on education about tattooing and body piercing. So I'm sure you can find something else to watch. If you're looking for something exciting, titillation, and etc., you're going to be disappointed. The sole purpose of this video is to educate those considering getting this piercing done and possibly their partners or someone that knows them, or those that are just curious about piercing in general. This is not designed to excite you in any way, shape, or form, and you might be disappointed unless it's just me that makes you excited. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to break it into 3 different parts. We're going to talk about 3 different styles of jewelry. The first one being rings or circular jewelry. That would include circular barbells and etc. The second would include curved barbells. The third being standard or straight barbells. Before I get into that, we should probably talk about one simple thing. Thickness of the jewelry. This is a common question I get, is how thick, what gauge should we pierce at, etc. It's my experience, nothing should be pierced in the genitals under 14 gauge. Anything thinner than that, because the tissue is so soft, will not have the durability to stay in and deal with trauma. In fact, a majority of these I would suggest not doing with anything thinner than 12 gauge, and in most cases, stretching the piercing to a thicker gauge can sometimes make the piercing feel more comfortable. It's especially true with Prince Albert piercings. So let's talk about rings. What should you pierce with rings? Rings have an advantage in this part of the anatomy, mainly because there's a long standard of using them in this area. And they have extra room and the ability to expand. And because we're working in an area that's constantly changing, sometimes on an hourly basis, depending on who you are and what have you, we really have to take into account that that area is going to expand and contract a great deal. So with rings, even though they are oversized a little bit, they give a little extra room for certain piercings that need them. The first one would be a Prince Albert piercing. For those who don't understand what a Prince Albert is, it is a piercing that goes through the bottom of the urethra, a little bit behind the glans. There's kind of a triangle there with most people that are circumcised. Then through the urethra and out. Because that area expands and contracts a lot, using a curved barbell, which is possible, you can pierce with them. The problem is they have to be extremely oversized. Otherwise, it'll create pressure on the front of the urethra, or it'll create pressure against the piercing during the healing process. It's my experience that rings seem to heal faster and be less traumatic. That varies from person to person, and it's definitely something you want to discuss with your piercer when you get it done. With Prince Alberts and curved barbells, they always have to be sized so where it would be comfortable if you are erect. There's no way around it. They should also have a balancing point to them, meaning that the front ball should be slightly larger than the back ball so that the weight keeps the front out of your urethra. I usually suggest something close to a 1/2 inch in the front and something close to a 3/8 in the back. Next piercing I'm going to suggest that you do rings is scrotum piercing. So this is another area that expands and contracts a lot. The rings, the only disadvantage to them is they have a higher profile, but they seem to heal really well in this particular area. The next one would be Lowrum piercings. Once again, we're dealing with this expanding and contracting. They can be done with standard or straight barbells. I don't suggest curved ones, but it's usually depends on how much webbing area you have down there. Lowrums, for those that don't know, is kind of like a Frenum piercing, but it's placed right at where the shaft connects to the scrotum. And there's kind of a loose webby area there, and that's usually where it's pierced. A ring seems to hang there better and look more natural, but it varies greatly from person to person. If that lobe is not pronounced or that web isn't pronounced as much, then possibly a standard barbell is going to be a much better option for you. Guiche piercings, located at the base of the scrotum. This one, rings seem to be the best option. I have done them with standard barbells and curved barbells in the past. You really want to position it so it's above that break point where your legs connect, where your thighs connect. But rings, it just seems like they tend to heal better down there and allow a little extra room for swelling, etc., and you don't have something as awkward. Like I said, curved barbells can be done down there, and standard, I prefer standard if you're going to do it with that, but something about having that curvature in with the ring works better. The thing with scrotum and Guiche piercings that most people don't understand is usually it's almost like a surface-to-surface piercing, and it will grow kind of a flesh tunnel out of the body that covers the jewelry. Any other part of the body, this would probably reject, but for some reason in genitalia, it doesn't, especially in this area of the body. And rings kind of fit better into that. Reverse PA. This one, it really depends on your anatomy. It's definitely something you want to discuss with your piercer when you get it done. This is a piercing I don't do. I was never trained to do Apadravya's, Ampallings, or reverse PAs. I don't feel comfortable doing them or experimenting on clients, so I've never done them. However, you can do this one with a ring, though it's my general understanding that a curved barbell is often a better option. It is one of those piercings that can be very tricky to heal, just basically because of its location. The last one would be pubics. Pubics are one of those piercings I think every piercer on the planet kind of wishes would go away. They're not a very popular piercing. They're located at the base of the shaft on the top in that pubic area. Some people have kind of a loose webby tissue, kind of like a Frenum or a Lowrum, I should say. They can be pierced that way. It is basically a surface-to-surface piercing, and it's my experience that it has a high rejection rate. You can do it with a curved barbell. You can also do it with a surface-to-surface barbell. Whether or not that's going to be more successful or not really depends on your anatomy, and chances are it's not going to keep anyway. Foreskin piercings. If you're uncut, you can pierce your foreskin. They're usually done on the end of the foreskin when the penis is flaccid. Rings work well here because it allows that extra room when you expand, when you become erect and it pulls downward. So instead of those barbells being super loose and hanging all over the place, the rings tend to get less contact with clothing, bedding, etc., or at least don't have as much prone to catching. Sometimes barbells can work as like little fingers sticking out there, and the more that barbell is exposed, the more likely it is. With this one, kind of a lobal type piercing, sometimes rings are a better option. Now let's move on to curved barbells. There's one primary piercing that I suggest doing with curved barbells, and that's Dydoes. Dydoes, for those who don't know, is a piercing that's done on the On the glands, usually on someone who's circumcised, is kind of through that natural ridge, usually traditionally on both sides, though they can be done pretty much wherever the anatomy allows for it. Curved barbells kind of dig more into that tissue. It also kind of fits more into that tissue with those two balls on both sides and that natural post that goes kind of into it. Rings would be too much contact and constantly getting in the way. Standard barbells or straight barbells just wouldn't give that curvature we need. Of course, I already talked about this. Prince Albert piercings can be done with curved barbells, also reverse PAs. With that out of the way, let's move on to standard barbells. The first one being Frenum Piercings. Frenum piercings can be pretty much done anywhere on the shaft if the tissue is loose, either on the top or the bottom. They're usually traditionally done on the bottom, starting just below the glands and working their way downward into what is commonly called a Jacob's ladder. Barbells just work better. Having something flat to that area is going to reduce the amount of stress you're going to have against that piercing. Having rings, it's probably going to lead to migration or rejection or a thinning out of the piercing. They need to be oversized. They need to be too large for the piercing area, and then downsize after it heals. The reason for this is the area expands and contracts, but it kind of contracts outward in this area, unlike other areas where it, this way in that way. Here, barbells definitely work better. No way around it. Now let's finish off with two piercings that I do not do. The first one being Ampallings, the second one being Apadravas. Both of these can only be done with a standard barbell. For those who don't know, an Apadravya goes straight up and down through the glands from top to bottom. An Ampallang goes straight across. Usually the Apadravya starts with like a PA piercing and then goes straight out. So it's kind of connecting a PA and a reverse PA. Both of these, they need to be sized when you're erect. There has to be definitely enough room for them. This is not a quick heal. It is a very long heal, and it's one of the piercings that I don't do for the mentioned reasons earlier. Well, that's all I have to say about the proper jewelry or the best jewelry for male genitalia. I hope you learned something today. I hope I answered some questions for you. And if I did, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you liked it, because we like it when you like it. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit that notification bell so that you're notified every single time we post something. If you like merch, you like t-shirts, you like handbags or whatever, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. There's also one of those bars down there. If I brought up a question or if you have something to add to the conversation, please leave a comment. I usually answer them if I have time. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Enjoy yourself. Stay clean, stay healthy, wear your mask, and social distance.